He has 24 years of experience in developing complex software platforms and building top notch engineering teams at highly successful startups and also world class software companies. He worked as a vice president and head of engineering India at Aptus, which is a code to cash startup. He also worked at iCertis, a Seattle slash Pune based startup, as VP engineering and managed iCertis products on Microsoft Azure Cloud. He worked at Ariba, which is now an SAP company, as director of engineering and managed engineering development for upstream, which is related to sourcing, CLM, spend analysis, and also downstream aspects like procure to pay catalog products on Ariba Commercial Cloud. He also worked at Yahoo as part of their cloud platform group and managed YGO and video transcoding platform. So what gives him kick is to make a difference with huge impact to the society in the area of education or healthcare or just anything which could make sense to the world and make the world a better place for humanity. In today's episode, let's learn more about Nikesh Jain's journey in starting up his own venture, Edurigo, and also get his insights on the least spoken topic, which is about career progression for middle level leaders. Hello, hi there. Welcome to the Guiding Voice podcast series, the Guiding Voice for a Better Future. This podcast is to help professional students, IT employees, and entrepreneurs to shape their careers. Dear listeners, in every episode, we interact with industry experts or thought leaders or academicians or coaches across the globe to drive some insightful conversations that will help our audience learn great things. This is your host, Naveen Samala, and I have about 18 years of rich and diversified experience in the IT industry. So, in case if you have tuned into our podcast for the first time, you have missed a lot of stuff, but don't worry. All our episodes are available on your favorite podcast listening platforms, including Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, JioSavan, Ghana.com, Spotify, Amazon Music, and also on YouTube. All you have to do is just search for The Guiding Voice and follow, like, or subscribe. Also, if you haven't rated our podcast on Apple, please provide your rating and leave a positive review because every rating and review will motivate us to bring in more and more useful content to you. Also, you will acquire more knowledge for every minute by listening or tuning into TGV than any other podcast in this space. That's a challenge from our side. Thank you so much for tuning in. Today, we are going to discuss the topic career progression beyond director level. And we are pleased to have Nikesh, part of TGV's journey in shaping the careers and lives of millions across the globe. Nikesh, welcome to TGV.
Thank you, Naveen. Thanks for having me here. Very nice to meet you.
Pleasure hosting you, Nikesh. And in fact, I really love the statement which you have mentioned. As long as even if one person is able to get influenced and if you are creating a positive impact in the society, that causes immense satisfaction. So with that note, let's get into the conversation. Can we talk very briefly about your career journey? Especially, I would be interested if you could highlight top three milestones or key decisions that have helped you.
Sure. So I started my career in 1996, graduated from Indore, one of the engineering colleges there. Everybody wanted to go to US that time. I just followed the herd, went to US, worked there in Silicon Valley, Bay Area for about 7 years. And the first decision milestone, I would say, was returning back to India. When I was earning a salary which people dream of, my green card was under process, is about to come. And I left everything and decided to move back to India. I moved back to Bangalore. That was one decision. I joined Oracle. They relocated me. And then Bangalore, Indian economy was booming that time, especially the software one, because a lot of companies were coming back, setting up their satellite offices or India Development Center, what we call them. So I had an opportunity to grow with that growth, I would say. And then, I work for companies like AOL, Yahoo, SAP. SAP, I worked couple of times, first Ariba, and then I went back to SAP from Yahoo. And that's where the second decision came because I was a director engineering there at SAP. They were paying me well, they were treating me well. SAP is a lovely company to work for. And that's when this call came from Pune, some company by name iCertis, never heard of them. And they wanted me to join as a VP engineering. I refused that job offer 3 times. I did not even want to talk to them. And the person kept following up. And one day I said, yeah, fine, send me the JD. She sent me the JD. I looked at that. I looked at the founders, and I felt like this is an opportunity I cannot miss. I should go and meet the founders. parked my car at the airport, took a flight, went there, met a CEO and a CTO, both founders, and rest is history. I joined that company, and I'm glad I joined that company. iCertis was, they had just secured three Series A, which was just $6 million funding, 30 people company. Nobody knew them. They were planning to compete with Aribas of the world. And I said, they can't do that. But then, I looked at the entire ecosystem, and I felt like there's something, to be very frank, I could see success written all over for some reason. It was a hunch or whatever you call it. And I worked there and grew that company from 30 people company to 250 people company, just engineering. And then I said it's a $6 billion company today. So, so that's a huge, and they have marquee customers like you name it and they have it. So they are the market in the CLM space in that category. They are the market leader. So huge respect for them. So that was the second decision which I took, because suddenly it took boost to my career from director engineering to VP engineering, and then growing with that startup. And when you work for a startup which grows at that level, you learn a lot, obviously. The only challenge was, I could not relocate my family to Pune. So I was taking a flight every Friday, which was difficult. So 2.5 years, I decided to move back to Bangalore. And that's when I joined Aptus. Worked there in Aptus for 3 years. And then the last decision, I decided to retire in 2020, August. And, I left Aptus and declared my retirement literally. That was the third best decision, I would say, milestone decision, I would say I took. So that's my journey. And then after that, Edirigo happened as an accident. To be very honest, came out of passion, just wanted to make a difference. And, it seems like all star aligned one day, and Destiny wanted me to open this company. And that's when Edirigo started, which is an edtech company. But we are not typical edtech. We are very different. We have built a platform which I think is top notch. It solves the problem in a very elegant way. And it is a progressive platform based on micro learning, a lot of gamification. Idea is to make learning fun, because 24 years I got bored learning the way corporates were learning, right? So just wanted to bring some fun to this, and that's where it is. And by the way, just wanted to disclose one more thing. I'm a Ranji Trophy player. I used to play for Madhya Pradesh. I played with players like Naren Hirwani, Amay Khurasia. So that we'll hear a lot about cricket when I give examples. So that's why I wanted to disclose that.
That's a bonus fact that you have shared with me. I'm interacting with the first ever Ranji player on the TGV. Thanks for really sharing that fact as well. Based on the answer that you have provided, like your journey seems to be quite unconventional. Like it's full of challenges that you have taken, and I could see that you are passionate about taking up some bigger things and all. So first of all, leaving some lucrative job in the US at the time where the employees are making a lot of money, and when the IT boom has actually started, you return to India, and from there you work with a big company like SAP and joining a startup. And now last year you have retired and started your own venture. So this is quite inspiring journey, Nikesh, and I'm sure it's going to help people like me also dream big. All right, moving to the core of today's conversation, Nikesh. We come across many leaders like who are stuck at the mid-career level. So can you share your observations? Why it happens?
So Naveen, let's understand the problem first, and then I'm sharing this observation in terms of a problem or a problem statement, so that a lot of people who are starting their career, they understand what to expect after 15 years. They can plan their career accordingly. See, we all if you see the natural progression, every organization is a pyramid. We can have only one CEO, and below that we can have few VPs, SVPs, executives, and then you have directors, and that's called director, and below senior manager, that's the mid level. And then the ground level, we have all programmers, like we all started our career like that. Now, the challenge is, like, when you're going up the ladder, not everybody can become a manager, because for 10 people, there is only one manager required, typically speaking, right? Same applies to when you go to senior manager. So that pyramid, the width of the pyramid is decreasing, obviously. Now in IT, so there are two kind of companies in software. Primarily, one is the typical IT companies, IT consulting services companies like TCS of the world, Infosys of the world. There, the only concept which works is you're billable or you're unbillable. It's a crude way to put it, but that's the fact. I mean, we all need to accept that, right? And that's why they're in the business. So, if everybody who becomes a manager, till the time you're coding, you are billable to the client, and then you are adding to the top line and bottom line. But when you become a manager, then you're an overhead. I mean, again, I'm putting things in a very crude way, but I want to be as transparent as possible. And this was told to me by a a CEO of a big IT company. I happened to work with him once for a few years. I can't disclose the name, of course. So he told me that for an IT company to be, services company to be successful, pyramid is really, really critical. So they need to figure out when to move people out of that pyramid to maintain the margin, right? So that's where you need to be very careful. And that's where the challenge is, that you can become a manager easily. You can become a senior manager easily. You can become a director, or typically a director level person is called delivery manager there. But you don't require hundreds of delivery manager. You can have only one or two or few. What about the others who started at the same level? So that's the challenge. This is one observation on the IT side. Although I haven't worked in services company, maybe just a year. Then the second is, let's talk about these product companies and the captive companies, like SAPs of the world, Oracle of the world, or HSBC, the banks and all that, who have Wells Fargo, who have big captive houses here. See, this company are all headquartered in somewhere else, primarily in US. When they did not have an India development center, what they were doing to reduce the cost, they were going to all these IT companies, right? And IT companies were, of course, they charging them whatever they could charge. Now, these people are smart. They figured out that why to pay $8,000 per month or $10,000 per month for a resource which they can get in India for 1/4 of cost probably. They decided that anyway we are getting the guy from services company in India only. Why don't we open our own center? And that's where that boom started. Oracle was the first one, probably Oracle and Siemens. They started in 90s, but then after that, beyond 2000 companies, everybody started opening their centers here. Now, again, the challenge is they hired a lot of people. But now when these people started growing, the challenge came, not everybody can become a manager, right? Not everybody can become a senior, same pyramid problem, because pyramid works there as well. Now there the challenge was bigger because the decision makers were there. A manager basically, he would just hire 10 people in India and manage from US. He would become a director, but he can't give the director position here because he will lose his job, correct? So there the challenge is actually much bigger. So, my experience is primarily in that glass ceiling is much harder to break in product companies. Once you become director, you can count number of directors on your finger in a company, literally. I'll give you an example. There's a real example, and I talked to the GM of that company. So, this company has 1,200 people. This data is 6 months old, may not be valid at this point of time, but still, this company is Nasdaq traded company. It was a startup, then went public. They have total 1,600 people, 1,200 in US. They have a headquarter in Bay Area. And then they have India offices, one in Hyderabad, where you are right now, one in Pune. Now in US, for 1,200 people, they have 77 VP and above positions. 77, all right, for 1,200 people. In India, they have 400 people. Guess how many VPs are there? Can you pick a number?
Maybe 2 or 3.
One.
Oh my God.
This guy is head of India, GM, VP, whatever you want to call him. So for 400 people, they have one VP. Now, if I just simply go by ratio, 1,200, you have 77. Let's make it 75. So for 1/3 of it, you should have 1/3 of this also here. 75 divided by 3 is 25. You should have at least 25. If not 25, maybe 10, maybe 15. Do I see so many VPs in India? No, I don't. In my lifetime, I don't. So that's a genuine problem. Now, so the growth will be very slow. Even if you become a director, becoming a VP in India, it's a challenge, especially in product companies. So that's my observation. And I hope using that observation, people can plan their career, and we'll discuss, of course, how to solve this, or what are the solutions, if there are any.
This is a staggering number, actually. Like 400:1 versus 1,200:77. And thank you for being so candid. I think a lot of insights, especially from the management side. And you have rightly touched upon, especially when it comes to these layoffs or some repurposing of the talent exercise and all. First thing that they look at is billable versus non-billable. And that's why we see many of the major consulting firms, the laying of the middle management quite often. Right.
So can I share one thing, and which is real? I was at Yahoo. I worked for Yahoo, such a big company, right? And Yahoo is one company where in a headquarter in India, we were more or less same. One company, that's why I loved working there. I was a senior manager, and one point of time before Marissa Mayer, the one CEO came. I can't remember his name. I think Steve or Smith or something like that. He was there for short duration though. He did two things. He said there is no QA required. So he instructed all of us to convert those QA to developers. They said, you write the software, you test it. That was one thing. Second thing he said, I'm removing entire middle management. In as many words, it said, if you're a manager or a senior manager, your job is there for next 6 months. That's it. Figure out. Now think about a situation for a person like me, right? I'm a senior manager and I know my job will go. That's where you need to figure out how to plan your career. And we'll discuss that. I just shared this example so that people know how scary it is to be in that layer.
Absolutely. So yeah, I think it is always better to be on the technical side. At least if we learn these technologies from time to time and all, that might help. But yeah, probably I would switch the gears and talk about the other aspect of this particular topic. See, so far we have seen from the management side and from the organization perspective, but from the middle managers themselves, people who are at manager, senior manager up to director level, what kind of mistakes are these people making not to be able to climb up or break that particular glass ceiling?
I think mistake is a harsh word. First thing that the challenge itself is like, I told you, it's a natural problem. In the journey of your career, you have to cross that, whatever you want to call it, like that hump you have to
Barrier,
cross, barrier you have to
barrier.
cross, right? That barrier comes, once you take a particular decision and become a manager, and after that, from manager to senior manager to director to senior director, that's a risky journey. But everybody has to cross it, because that's the only way to reach to the next side. One thing which these in the middle management, let's use mistake word, like, we get into the comfort zone. Like, becoming a manager is like, it satisfies your ego. I manage people now, people report into me, I can order, and all those kind of things. It happens in the natural way, and then we lose that touch to technology. That's one problem. And then we sort of become people manager, we get into other things. If you stay in that zone for 2-3 years, it's very easy to get into that comfort zone, and then you forget that software is changing at a very fast pace. You become rusty very soon. So, moment you become rusty, then you're not adding that incremental value in that zone. Either you sort of grow, and if you are not able to grow, then you give side, you just stay on the side. And the side is basically, you just go out of the system. So that's the risk you are playing at. Becoming complacent on getting into that comfort zone and not keeping up with the technology at times is a problem. So I think, that's where middle management have to be very careful about. And then, of course, as I said, you need to keep, it's a glass ceiling. So you need to keep pushing that glass ceiling in the right way. And the only way to push it, like, with your skill. And that skill is, you have to be technically apt, you need to communicate well, you need to manage your people well, and all that. Basically, at the end of the day, if you're adding value to the organization, then you will be able to break that ceiling. It's at some point of time you will be able to break it. So don't get into that comfort zone.
This is something like eye-opening. Definitely, I see a lot of value add in this conversation. The kind of facts that you have brought to the table. Don't be in the comfort zone. Do not lose touch with the technology. The moment you become rusty, you are making yourself vulnerable. Push the glass ceiling the right way to break it. Thank you so
Yeah.
much for those amazing insights, Nikesh. Nikesh, now let's talk about the solution part. What should organizations do differently to provide some opportunities, maybe with a right intent, not
Sure.
forgetting about the revenues, margins part of it, and because these are the guys who have been part of their journey. Yeah.
Absolutely. So Naveen, I think the solution is very simple, actually, in my mind. Honestly
Mhm.
speaking, I think, that the mindset has to be changed, and organization has to do that. And it has happened in US. And I'll give you two examples. Using those examples, I'll try to answer this question: what should organization do, and then what should people also do? We'll talk about that as well. I was in US. This is back in 2000 time frame, 2003. I remember I was working for this startup. Again, we sold this startup to a publicly traded company in Bay Area. And then it's for a workflow system written in C++. So there was a guy by name Larry. I forget his second name. He was 55-year-old guy. 55-year-old guy. He was retiring from that company, and he was writing code at the age of 55. And I was the one who took the KT from him in a month's time. He offloaded all his knowledge and that code and that engine basically to me. I took the KT from him because he was retiring, right? Now, at the last working day, he was sharing his code with me. You get the point? At the age of 55, and he retired, right? So in US, that was happening in 2000. So there were people who are doing that. I will give you another example on the other side of the world, because the way I think India grew, I think it's all natural though. I'm not complaining, or I'm not saying this is. It's all natural progression. In one of the companies, I was a manager, senior manager there. One of the guys who was 8 to 9 years of experience, he was my principal architect, not principal, sorry, principal engineer. Came to me one day and he said, Nikesh, I need to grow to a manager. And I said, why do you want to become a manager? You're such a high-tech guy. I mean, doing great things. And why do you want to become a manager? Said, no, there's a lot of social pressure. My uncle, aunts, when they come, they say, what are you? Principal engineer, what is that? You're not a manager. You're not managing people. You're not even a lead. So think about the pressure think about the reason that guy is coming to me to get promoted. Or, it was not even a promotion. It was a lateral move for him. In that company, principal engineer is equivalent to manager. So he was my peer in that way. I told him, dude, don't do that. It's not necessary that you become a manager. You're good at technology. Stay there. And my message to these people is like, stay with technology for as long as you can. Moving from a technical ladder to a managerial ladder is piece of cake. If you are a distinguished engineer or you're a principal architect in some company, any day you to go and tell them you want to become a VP, they will, with folded head, they will make you a VP. For VP, you need certain qualities and all that thing. But when you grow to a principal technical ladder, you grab those things, the soft skills and whatever communication skills you require to, because you're not managing people directly, but you're impacting so many people. People respect you for your technical skills. So moving from that technical ladder to this side is very easy. So coming back to your question, organizations, they should promote that culture. You should not become a manager very soon. No need to become a manager. Provide them the technical ladder, which is very strong. Every function, basically, whether you're in support, whether you're in development, whether you are in QA, the technical ladder is there, and it should be seen as respected thing. So think about it. Like if all we need today, if you see the software industry, everybody is having 5 jobs. You go in the market and you have 5 jobs. Why can't some of this manager can take those jobs and write code and become, principal engineer or senior software engineer or whatever? Right? Because those jobs are to be taken by somebody. The manager was writing code at some point of time. So I think the way we should groom our freshers, that do not try to become a manager very soon. Stay with the technical ladder, keep coding, be good at whatever you are doing. And then even, if people are becoming managers and all, an organization should make sure they are very technical. So a senior manager to me is an architect, honestly speaking. He should be able to identify the architect or find flaws in the design and all. That's the only way you can manage, because you're not managing people. You're managing a software. So that's what organization do. It's a cultural shift which we need, which was there in US. I gave you that Larry's example. We need to bring that in India. And it's coming. I know somebody who has 25 years experience in one of the companies. He worked with me and he is still coding. So there are people like that in India also.
I'll also share my experience. When I worked with General Electric, I spent there for good 11 years there. And I've seen many of our US counterparts spending 35 years in the same mainframes and all. And they were happy with that kind of position. Like, of course, they reached up to that manager level and from there. But as you mentioned, they were more like though the role says as senior manager, but they were more like architect of that particular system. They know in and out of it. And they become linchpin. If you become linchpin of the organization, nobody can remove you, right?
Yeah.
Great.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you spoke about this grooming the freshers, not to get into this leadership role and all. And now I would like to dive deep into that. So if at all freshers, right? Normally what happens is they get into the organization, they get 1-2 years experience just to get a glimpse of how the corporate life looks into, and then get into MBA kind of thing or MS kind of thing. And many a times these days it is MBA. And what they want is soon after completing MBA, they want a manager or assistant manager or a deputy manager kind of role. So what would be your advice to the engineering grads, who have this kind of mindset wherein work for 2 years, get MBA, get into that management ladder?
That's the worst thing you can do to your career. You have wasted 4 years of engineering because you wanted to do an MBA. I mean, this has been said in a lot of movies also, so I'm just sort of repeating from there. That's a bad combination. You should do an MBA, but not after 2 years, 3 years. You can do an MBA after 10 years also. Once you understand that world, and once you figure out that what you want to do. What, to be very frank, when you graduate from college, most of the time you don't know what you want to do, honestly speaking. We all feel like, I got into engineering, I knew what I wanted to do. 80% of the cases we don't. I was figuring out my career for the first 2-3 years, honestly. And that hasn't changed, I believe. I think we should all, if you have done the engineering, get into a job for some time. Doing MS is okay, doing PhD is okay. I mean, that we are talking about, going deep into the same stream, which is fine. If you wanted to become a manager, then you should have done an BBA, plus that with an MBA or something like that. Then it makes sense. So that's one advice I would give to people, don't get into this kind of khichdi very early in your career.
Yeah, same is the case with those who want to get into the civil services. They do this engineering, that too from a reputed colleges, and then finally get into UPSC and all. For UPSC, normally even a regular non-professional degree would work, right? Because here I'm talking about the opportunity lost to a person who might have got one rank below this person, because of which he was forced to get into something which is not so fascinating and all.
And think about how much the person who did not, after putting all the hard work, did not get into the college, how much pressure he would have got into after this, how much depression and all that, right? So basically, you're right. It's an opportunity lost for somebody else. So you better be careful with your decisions, because your decisions are not your decisions alone. I mean, they're impacting somebody else as well.
Great. I think this has been fantastic conversation so far. Now let me switch gears and talk about the young employees. How can these young employees be very proactive especially the first 3 to 5 years stint, what are certain things they need to focus on to have a long lasting career? Because one thing which I would like to bring to the table is we are talking about the gig economy. Like because of the huge success of this hybrid working model, since pandemic has proven that anybody can work from anywhere and all. You don't need permanent employees as such in future. That's my anticipation. Right? Keeping in view of all these things, how can the young professionals be proactive?
We are talking about software only, right? Or you?
Yes.
So if you,
Mainly software.
we'll just focus on that because that's the only thing I know. So if you're somebody who has got into software, I'm hoping that you knew why you got into that. It's an informed decision you've taken. So once you get into software, it's an ocean. It's an ocean. In one lifetime, you cannot learn everything. You cannot, period. So what you need to do, figure out first 2-3 years, it's okay to figure out what you want to do. You want to get into services or you want to do product development, whatever you want to do, figure that out. One thing is stay technical. This is one message in as many words. If you want to bold it, underline it, I'll say 100 times. Please stay technical. As a VP engineering, trust me, I could look at the code. I could look at the schema and I can tell you that this is schema, the way the these tables are designed or schema is designed, you will get into performance problems. And I recently in Edirigo, I solved a performance problem, which was a serious problem for us. Staying technical is very important at any stage of your life. And again, I keep getting that into the Larry's example. Like Larry, you have to keep writing code. At any day, if you can fold your sleeve and write a line of code, nobody can touch you. As simple as that. So as a youngster, when you start, do not get attracted by this manager that you become a manager, you will manage people, you want to become a VP. We are nobody. Trust me. We are the most vulnerable people in the organization, if I may say so. Right? If you're technical, then basically you have a life. Then you can command things. And as I said, you can grow it typically around 8 years of experience. You have to decide whether or no there will be a lot of pressure on you that, hey, can you become a manager? Can you start managing this? And you get into the trap. Because at that point of time, there was a vacuum and somebody wanted to fill it. Now you got into that trap, although you did not want it, but then stay like an architect. You can manage people, but still behave like an architect for whatever time you can. At some point of time, I understand you will lose your touch. It's natural again. But there also I've seen, again, going back to Yahoo, I know a VP engineering. I won't name him. He is in one of the biggest organization in Bangalore. He's a CTO now. That guy was taking mathematics course when he was VP engineering. He was learning maths because he wanted to get into AI and all that. He wanted to understand those things. At VP engineering, he was taking a course which required him to spend a lot of time. So that's what he was doing to upskill him. So at every point of time, you have to upskill. It's an ocean. Good news, everything is available on internet. I started with Fortran. Today, if I tell somebody Fortran, people wouldn't even know what it is, what I'm talking about. Java, I learned in my first job. And I started with Java version, I don't know, point something. And today, I don't know Java, which version of Java we are talking about. And two worlds are totally different. Angular, if you have written Angular 1 code, 1.0 code, by the time 3.0 come, people used to tell me, Nikesh, we have to rewrite the entire code because there is no relation between these two. These are two different languages. So technology is changing so fast, so you have to upskill yourself. Long answer, but stay technical. That's the mantra.
I think being technical will make you less vulnerable. That's the summary of your answer. Thank you. And you also made me nostalgic by going back to this Fortran days. I heard about Fortran. It stands for Formula Translation.
I don't remember that. Yeah, but I know I entered engineering, we were just dealing with Fortran.
And one other thing is like Fox Pro. Like this was taught in the institutes. When I was in my...
that was the only DBM, Fox Pro, Fox Basic, and Basic was another language, Pascal. I wrote some nice code, and the floppy drives. Let's not forget them. I used to carry a floppy drive, which I don't know how many inches, and then when that floppy drive became a smaller one, we were so happy, man, such a big progression. The computer was 8086, 286, 386, and all that. Today, what we are talking about, this is a different world.
Today, we are not even talking about storage. Everything is in cloud. I'll talk about floppy. Like I took my third year engineering project. There was a mini project kind of thing. And it was supposed to be carried in the floppy. And floppies were very risky. You know, right? You cannot predict whether they'll work or not. By the time I brought it, there was no code.
And you couldn't say that my homework was written by a dog. That's there in the floppy.
So fantastic conversation, super Nikesh. Let's add more spice to the episode. I would like to ask you a few interesting rapid fire questions wherein you can answer in 2 to 3 words or one phrase. Are you ready?
Okay, well, I'll give it a shot.
You'll make it for sure. Thank you for the spirit. Let me fire the first bullet out of the rapid fire. I would say, which 3 words describe Nikesh?
Frank, blunt, and hardworking.
I think we go hand in hand. I'm almost the same. A lot of similarities. All right. So moving on to my second bullet. What is your favorite failure?
Okay, so failure. So that word actually, somehow. So can I answer it a little different if you don't
Yeah,
mind?
yeah, it's okay,
There
absolutely.
are three words, Naveen. I have removed them from my dictionary: success, failure, and regret. I just don't use these words in my life, right? And there's a reason because failure. Let's talk about that. Like the failure happens when you try something, and if you have tried for something, if you tried something, you learn. You don't failure in what you expected certain thing, it did not happen, but you learned. Now, as long as learning is happening, how can we call it a failure? You get that, right? So similarly, success. Like what is success? I don't know. I mean, beyond a point, success is relative, is subjective. So I don't use that word. Am I successful? I don't know, honestly speaking, right? And the regret. So whenever you regret something which happened in past. Well, if you're regretting that, you're living in past. Move on. Regret means it was a failure in the normal definition. Move on. So I don't regret anything. It was an experience. You learned something. Let's move on. Let's not repeat that. So sorry, I'm not answering your question, but differently.
No, no, I simply loved it. Thank you. I think this is something everybody should keep in their mind. Remove these three words. Because success, as you said, right? Once we reach certain level, let's assume manager level. What next? Maybe if I reach senior manager in 1 year, that might be a success for you and for those around you. But after that, again, you start working director. After director, again VP, whatever.
This never participate. One message, if I can give everybody, do not get into this rat race. It will cause depression at some point of time, because you will compare yourself, and then whenever you compare, सामने वाले की चीज हमेशा बड़ी होती है.
Yeah,
There is always somebody who is bigger than you, right?
yeah, yeah.
And we forget to see there are thousands who are not as fortunate as you are behind you. So never compare. You are what you are. That's it.
Perfect. That's a lovely example. Yeah. Moving on with my next question out of the rapid fire. What's your favorite movie dialogue, Nikesh?
See, I'm a big Amitabh Bachchan fan, so that has to be from one of those movies. One dialogue, I'd use two actually. I use it very often in a joking way that from Sholay, Surma Bhopali, मियाँ आपका हैदराबाद का है मियाँ दो
Acha.
रुपए में जंगल खरीदोगे क्या या जंगल खरीदने आए हो 2 रुपए में so that's very famous whenever and I use it very often jokingly with people, right? The second one is the Amitabh Bachchan Kalias, I think, which is जहाँ हम खड़े हो जाते हैं लाइन वहीं से शुरू होती है. Something like, I love that one. His attitude.
I love that. I think we can translate it for the global audience. So first one is like you cannot buy a forest with 2 rupees, and second one is our line begins from where I stand.
Wherever I stand, life starts from there. Stay behind me. That's a rude way to say it, but I'm just. It's a dialogue, guys. So don't attach that with my personality. Okay.
No, no, absolutely. This is something that's why we have framed it. What's your favorite movie dialogue, not what you stand by. All right. So moving on to the next question. So what has been a question on your mind for which you never got an answer for?
That's a difficult one, Naveen. Never got an answer for. Okay, so maybe I will just relate to EdTech. I always wonder. It's been 70 years of independence. We are still not able to provide education to everybody, and that bothers me, honestly speaking. And by the way, this is the first time I'm telling this on any public forum. I went to a government school. I'm from a very humble background. My parents couldn't afford a private school for me those days. So they put me in a government school in Indore, right? It was a great school actually. But and I worked with a lot of government schools during my volunteering days with NGOs. And I still feel it bothers me that we are not able to provide education to all these underprivileged kids for whatever reasons, right? Quality education. When I say education, is not 2 plus 2 is 4. And then this sanskar, the values for which India was famous for 2000 years ago, 1000 years ago, those values we have lost somewhere. So that something bothers me, and that's the somebody can explain me why, I would be grateful. Just to add to that, company Edirigo is one small effort towards that. That's why I started.
Such a noble cause, actually. I'm sure it is going to benefit the community at large. And to add to your point, when it comes to the education, the holistic education is missing. It's all being taught to secure grades, and after that, maybe get into IIT. After IIT, someone is leaving the country or getting into some job. But what is it they are giving back? Because country spends a lot of money on these IITs and all.
So I'm gonna write a post. I've been thinking of that. You know what? How much education? What was my fees? School fee, 42 rupees per year. That include 2 meals. Now that was the cost was definitely more than that. Who was paying for that? The taxpayer.
Public taxpayer.
Taxpayer. My engineering college total fee was maybe 2,500 rupees. Total 4 years, 2,500. You convert it in dollars for our global audience. It's like hardly
Less than
$50,
$100.
$50 in today's rate. That was my cost of four-year engineering. Who was paying for that?
Taxpayers.
Now, if I take that education and then book a flight, go to US and then settle down there, with all due respect, a lot of my friends are there. But what have we given back? At least pay the fee back, correct? At least we could do that. So I think we have some fundamental problems. We need to fix that in education, and I hope someday either people will realize or system will realize.
Fantastic. I resonate with you, completely concur with you. So with that, let me move on to the last one for the rapid fire. So Nikesh, what will be the message that you will give to your own younger version?
My own younger version. So take care of your health. Please take care of your health. Sleep by midnight. And by the way, so I can't go back in time and give that advice to myself. But I use this opportunity to give this advice to my daughter, who is like me. She's in a college right now in New York, and she is like owl. Of course, during pandemic, she had her classes, so she had to attend a class from Bangalore at 3 a.m. in the morning. Obviously, so that time it's okay, but that has become a habit, and I keep telling her that you got to sleep at a reasonable time, right? If not 11 p.m. by midnight. So when you don't do that, your health will get impacted whether you like it or not. You might say, hey, I'm all good, I sleep 8 hours, doesn't matter. So if you don't have a cycle, it's a problem. So take care of health. That one advice I would give to myself.
That's so profound. And thank you for the amazing rapid fire. We started with your personal attributes of being frank, blunt, and hardworking, removing 3 words: success, failure, and regret. And we spoke about your favorite dialogues and also some eye-opening insights on the education part. So thank you so much for being so candid in the rapid fire. With that, let me flip back to the mainstream and ask you one final question for this session. So Nikesh, what will be your one piece of advice to those aspiring to make big in their careers?
It's another difficult one. What do I say? Okay, so I'll just get something from my character. Be optimistic always. See, it's optimism is not a choice. It's a necessity. A battle is won in your mind before you really win it. Remember this. So if you remember this, then most of the time, a normal language, what we call failure, it happens because you gave up too early, right? So never give up. Be positive, be optimistic, and then things will happen. Life is a journey. Life is not a destination. It's a journey. Enjoy it.
Such a profound set of thoughts. So Nikesh, thank you again for being part of TGV's journey. Thank you so much for all the wonderful insights. And in fact, you have covered a lot of topics beyond the core, which was about career progression beyond middle managers, and really loved your honesty and candidness. Thank you so much again for being part of our journey.
Thank you, Naveen. Thank you so much for having me here. I enjoyed this conversation.
Pleasure hosting you, Nikesh.
Thank you.
So before we move into the trivia section, dear audience, here is a request to you. If you have loved this episode and found it useful, please share it with at least 3 of your friends or colleagues who can benefit from this show. The more you share, the wider we reach, and we will get closer to our mission of reaching millions across the globe. So thank you so much in advance. All right, now let's move into the trivia segment of today's episode. And today's trivia is about social media platforms. Here comes my question. So which website amongst Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and others, particular website has a feature of repinning? I'm sure you must be thinking, but let me tell you the answer as per the ritual. It is the Pinterest has a repinning feature wherein if someone publishes a pin or posts a pin, it can be repinned against your profile. Interesting, isn't it? Thank you so much for listening. There is more in store, folks. Stay tuned. Take care. Be safe. Until next time. Bye-bye. And we are signing off for today. See you all in the next episode with another wonderful guest.